Hey, what's up everyone? John from ARTV. Today I am uploading this Patreon supported review to the ARTV Extras channel in addition to posting it to Twitter and Facebook because this isn't just your typical Patreon supported review. This is for somebody who is actually a YouTuber themselves who has a Patreon account themselves for what they do that was kind enough to support me, so I wanted to take the time out, and instead of just the normal EP or single review, I am doing a review of the full-length album, the debut by Nightwalk, which is actually Dakota's project. Now, Dakota is somebody that I met at a Paramore concert last year. He was a viewer of mine, still is a viewer of mine, I should say. He came up to me, and I had no idea that he was on YouTube, and I think he mentioned something about some project that he was working on, but I really had no idea at that time. And it was really cool to see it come together down the line, and then me discover his channel, and then tweet him, and then be like, hey, is this you? And it was him. So make sure you go check out the Nightwalk YouTube channel. I will leave a link in the description. He does everything from like, if Muse was this, or if a Royal Blood song was this. He does like those fun like play on things like if Havana was a Muse song, for example. So without further ado, we'll get right into it. He's a big fan of Royal Blood and Muse, and I think that right away I see the Muse influence more than anything bleeding into his debut album Maps in the Dark, for better or for worse. In places, I do feel like it's a little bit overtly so in the terms of like which it's used, and there's some falsetto vocals that I definitely think are questionable. And getting my criticisms, I suppose, out of the way first before we move on to the positives, because I really do like a lot of the songs on this record, or at the very least enjoy them. I think that the album opens up with an inconsistent tone. We get something like Not Tonight, which is kind of funky, and it has a nice guitar on it, but the vocals feel a little bit weird in the mix. And then right after that, we get a track called Rejected, which I read along with the lyrics for the entire album, and this one in particular just struck me as being a little bit weaker. Definitely not to tear down, but just something where I feel like if we're left to focus on the vocals, then they're not as gripping because they just don't seem like they fit with the musicianship that's being used. Now, on the other hand, there are some great tracks here that might remind me of other acts, but it is a debut album, and with somebody like Nightwalk still getting their footing, I can definitely see how this will resonate in the future. One track that I feel stands in a league of its own in a way is titled I'll Be Anything, and this one uses a little bit of like romanticism, but also a little bit of quiet desperation, if you will, to get its point across. And I like that. I think it's the strongest vocal performance on a track that isn't like a Muse-esque one, and not to say that there aren't possibly influences of Muse or other bands, and not just to draw one comparison over and over again, but this one truly stood out to me, and I'm a pretty big fan of it. I think that there's a few other tracks that I really do like that branch out towards the end of this record. We get one called Vitality. Actually, I'm sorry, it's right before that. Who's Leaving is the track that reminds me of the Beach Boys. And those Beach Boys styled like opening vocals, the way that they kind of coo and lean their way in, it's a really interesting vibe, and I was kind of sold on it after a few listens. Now, right after that, we do get the track called Vitality that has those Muse influences, some pounding, thundering riffs, and just a monumental, epic, sweeping feel to it. You'll definitely, if you check out this record, which you should, link in the description or else in the tweet wherever you're watching this video, if you check it out, you'll notice that there are some interesting string arrangements and some additional performances on this record that make it worthwhile. And it adds a lot to something like Vitality, for example, or Last Chance, which is another one that definitely has epic sensations to it. There's a really interesting cut in the form of the title track, Maps in the Dark, and this one, I don't know exactly what it is. The way that the guitar seems almost a little bit playful, but it reminds me of Another Brick in the Wall Part 2 by Pink Floyd, and trust me, it's a compliment. I love The Wall, I love that riff, and not to say that this seems borrowed or stolen at all. It's played in a different style. It's just possibly the speed and the way that it's played, it reminds me of it. And I definitely think that that's a good sensation to get when listening to even a debut project. I think that overall, there are weaker tracks that I've already highlighted. Another one like Spin You Around, which I just think is weak lyrically and musically, not very interesting or captivating, not to be rude at all. That's just definitely my least favorite song on the project. There are moments that I feel mixed on, higher and higher, where I don't feel like the vocals or even the music is that engaging, but in places it changes up and actually shifts into something else, a different beast, if you will. And then there's songs that I'm just enthralled by, ones that are more captivating. It's, I suppose, a bit spotty, a little bit messy, but it is a debut album, and I think that there's a lot of potential here. Dakota is clearly talented. I think the vocals need work in places, and the falsettos could be toned down overall. The musicianship is mostly strong. I think that he's a skilled guitarist, and it shows that he has a lot of passion for music. He's a one-man band, and it's impressive to see him putting this together. If you haven't checked this out yet, then please do so. Check out his YouTube channel. All of the songs are streaming there. The lyrics are in the description, or I will leave a link so you can stream this on Spotify. Now it's rating time. Overall for me, I have to say that, like I said, I was kind of torn, maybe not straight down the middle. I think I lean definitely a little bit more towards the positive side of the spectrum. So for me personally, overall, for the debut album Maps in the Dark by Nightwalk, I'm going to rate this a 3 out of 5. Thank you so much for supporting me on Patreon, Dakota. Really appreciate it. Maybe one day we'll have to collab on something. We met at a Paramore show, and I didn't even know that you actually had the YouTube channel. And then I discovered it by fate one day, and then you supported me on Patreon. So that is the conclusion of Chapter 1 of Nightwalk and ARTV. What'll happen in the future? Hopefully he likes the review. Other than that, I hope that you guys check out the album. For real, go support a musician that deserves it, a YouTuber that deserves it. So all of his stuff will be linked down below.